Hey everyone, it's Finch here, and we're back. This time around, we have another metagame analysis video. We're going to be discussing Black and White OU once again, and this time around, we're going to be discussing Magic Guard, its place in the metagame presently, its place in the metagame historically, and why Magic Guard Pokemon were so good. It's worth noting that during Black and White, that was really the first rise of Magic Guard Pokemon. For example, in DPP OU, while Clefable got Magic Guard, it didn't actually become good in DPP OU until, honestly, during the middle of Generation 6. It took many years afterwards for it to truly become a metagame staple, which it currently is now, years later. But during DPP, it was actually very much viable in UU. It was quite good in UU, but it never really saw the same usage in OU. Just as a little history lesson there. Dugtrio, and a couple other things honestly didn't pick up in DPP OU, and therefore were DPP UU until many years after the generation. In fact, past all of Generation 5 and well into Generation 6, they weren't the same. So now for Black and White OU, however, on the contrary, Magic Guard Pokemon were good from the early stages. In fact, during Black and White 1, Mew Nicholas was voted on as a quote-unquote suspect when he had suspect slates in the early stages of Black and White 1. However, it was never banned. And in fact, it arguably plateaued during the days of Black and White 1 into Black and White 2, where it was definitely a viable option, as well as Alakazam once it got Magic Guard in the middle of Black and White. Although Alakazam was a UU, RU Pokemon before that, I believe it was RUBL, or BL2 as we called it back then. And then we got Magic Guard, it became an OU Pokemon, but neither of these Pokemon were really super prevalent throughout Black and White 2, in parts because there were Pokemon like Genesect, Tornadus, Therian, etc., that were taking full force in the metagame, really standing out as the stand-up Pokemon. Standing out as a stand-up Pokemon, wow, very good sentence there. Wow, great. Standing out as the superior Pokemon, superior options that kind of gained the attention of the player base. But as Black and White 2 ended and XY came along, Magic Guard Clefable started to gain traction there, especially during ORAS, and people started using Magic Guard Pokemon, not only in DPP like Clefable around that point in time, but also Magic Guard became more prevalent in Black and White. Specifically, people like Bibidi and Ojama were very fond of using like dual Psychic teams with both of them, or one of them plus other Psychic types like Latios, Latias, and so on and so forth. To the point where ever since then, it's been a pretty common archetype, and arguably adding extra to the tier in a restricted fashion was kind of a reactionary step to all of that, which honestly, in hindsight, wasn't the most proper tiering, but this was before I was in charge of Black and White tiering and on the tiering council. And in addition, this was before old generation tiering in general was as prevalent as it was. So basically, Alakazam and Nicholas are the two viable Magic Guard Pokemon in Black and White OU. You could argue that Clefable has some fringe viability. There's surely some like rough merit there, but it doesn't really have the seeking power due to it being vulnerable to pursuit, weak to fighting types, and not immune to dragon types, which are things that it gains with the Generation 6 switch to the fairy typing. In all honesty, fairy typing Clefable is far superior to normal typing Clefable. Normal typing Clefable just isn't that good. And I'd argue that it wouldn't even be that good in Gen 6 despite everything it does there. And in Gen 5, it's certainly not good, so I don't even think it's listed on the viable ranking. So we're only going to be discussing Alakazam and Mew Nicholas. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go through a little historical analysis on what these Pokemon have been through over the years, why they're as good as they are, and then we're going to go into what the steps are used in the current metagame, or at least have used over the last year or two. First and foremost, Alakazam, again, it rose. I believe the Dream World ability Magic Guard for it came out during Black and White 2. It might have been late Black and White 1, don't quote me on that, but I know it was in UU and without Magic Guard at some point during Black and White 1, just because I remember looking at the tier list way back then, thinking, oh wow, Alakazam, that's a cool Pokemon, but this is back when I was like 14 years old, so it doesn't really hold much weight, in my opinion, back then. But anyway, as it got Magic Guard, it instantly rose to an OU Pokemon, and it ran a Focus Sash and a Life Orb variant. Here I only have outlined the Focus Sash variant, as it's far more common and also far superior. It is very poor bulk, but being able to flip any one hit, specifically from things like Tyranitar, Excadrill, Garchomp, Landorus T, etc., or Draco Meteors from Latios, simply is very good. It also has some Hydro Pump Rain. Just being able to live any one hit is great, and being able to get off 2 hits is great. It's super good with Choice Spikes and Sandstream. All that residual damage leads to it being a very potent and late game Pokemon to deal with. Moreover, it has a lot of viable moves we could use. As we see here, at least 8 moves that you see in it somewhat often. Well, really 7 moves in the knockoff, which I think has some fringe viability, but we'll get into that later. Alakazam became good during ORAS in Black-White, if that makes sense. As in, during Generation 6, it really gained more traction in Black-White. People started abusing it with Spikes and Sandstream, and that archetypic team really rose to prominence. And it has stayed as good as it is back then, since then, arguably. You could say that it took a bit of a hit 18 months to 2 years ago, but now it's back and it's quite as good as it is before. Um, it's great. You see it a lot nowadays. I use it twice in SPL, and I think other people use it as well. I went tour with Alakazam in SPL, and I've also used it in Black and White Cup, in Smogon Tour over the years, etc. So yeah, there's no denying that Alakazam is a potent late game force with the Focus Sash Magikarp variant in the Black and White overused metagame. Of course, Alakazam is not the only Magikarp user in the Black and White overused metagame. However, the other one plays very differently than Alakazam. It's Rio Nicholas, and here I have listed 4 sets. 3 of them you see decently, but you could arguably group it into 2 different genres of Rio Nicholas if you want. Calm Mind and Offensive Trick Room. Over the years, Calm Mind Rio Nicholas was seen as the kind of more problematic set, but Trick Room was always seen as a very nice anti-offensive option. It always saw fringe usage dating back to Black and White 1. In fact, in Black White 1, we even saw it paired with something nasty like offensive Conkeldurr on sort of semi-Trick Room teams. However, those cores no longer exist, but standalone Trick Room Nicholas to this day still remains a looming threat within the confines of the Black and White overused metagame. Beyond that, however, there are still lots of claims to Rio Nicholas' fame through the Calm Mind variant, which is infamous for really being a pain in the ass to deal with. You need specific counterplay, and even that sometimes cannot be enough due to how well it can stick around in games, the fact that it can even shrug off pursuits if need be, and so on and so forth. Rio Nicholas is a great addition to the metagame in my eyes. However, a lot of people have deemed it controversial over the years, it again being voted on in a slate in Black and White 1 to be banned. However, it never received enough support, and people complaining about it in particular during the Magikarp surge during Generation 6 that affected the Generation 5 metagame, basically. There was this whole slew of backlash towards the metagame and people saying that Magikarp teams were too OP, or Pokemon that had Magikarp with spikes were really good, the Psychic types in particular. And people like Heistojama, as I said, were very outspoken against these Pokemon, but ultimately Exegol was freed. That set them back a little bit because it deals with spikes and it can sort of soft check Rio Nicholas, if you will, in some capacities, especially when paired with Chople Tyranitar, which of course is very effective against Rio Nicholas in particular. Moving beyond that, moving beyond that, there were lots of people that were using different cores to overwhelm or slow down Rio Nicholas for maybe 6 to 8 months during the period after Exegol was freed. So Rio Nicholas slowed down a little bit, maybe even for a year or so. But now, just over the last 2 years, Rio Nicholas has surged up again, specifically over the last year and a half with a Calm Mind, Thunder, Hidden Power Ice variant that Megan popularized. However, also people like myself and Ewu and Mortis have used Calm Mind's Focus Blast Hidden Power Ice, and people also have been dabbling recently with Calm Mind plus Grass Knot, which I think might see an uptick in usage due to people just loving Grass Knot for Chople Tyranitar. But that aside, though, coverage or not, physically defensive Calm Mind Rio Nicholas with leftovers, or even Life Orb to bolster the damage output, specifically seen on sets with Focus Blast, help muscle past Tyranitar, Ferrothorn, and Excadrill without using many hits and having to hit repeatedly, is a very respectable option, and that damage output's great, especially since you're going to be knocked off against Ferrothorn and Gliscor teams a lot anyway. So, yeah, that's something worth noting. However, regardless of what item it has, it's a very pesky Pokemon to take down. You're going to require specific counterplay, especially with Jirachi being very poor in the metagame right now compared to its historic status when it was arguably an low S or high A plus tier Pokemon for a number of years throughout later Black and White 2 and Generation 6 Black White metagame as well. Trick Room sets in the modern day tend to run Recover more over Shadow Ball. However, 3 attacks with Shadow Ball is viable too. This spread in particular has been utilized to help tank Eladio, Strike, and Meteor and recover off always, but we'll get into more specifics later. And also, Ace Armor plus Calm Mind has been used a fair amount in recent months and years as well. Specifically, Ace 11 uses it on a lot of teams, but Pasho and I think a couple others have used it in recent memory as well. It's particularly good with Toxic Spike support, or something that could help cripple Tyranitar with Burn or Poison, or any Dark type for that matter. However, Rocky Helmet can also help do the trick as well. It's seen as a particularly cheesy option, as oftentimes you can potentially PP style Psychics, or you could maybe, you could paralyze it, and then it's kind of just left sitting there, sitting duck, prone to a lot of critical hits. So it relies a lot on not getting locked and getting the most of opportunities that are kind of RNG reliant, as there are a lot of chances to crit through it. There are a lot of chances for it to, just like not break through. A lot of chances for it to not do much against teams with Jirachi and Tyranitar, etc. With that said, though, it's definitely a viable option, and a lot of people are making use of it in the modern day, so it's cool to see a bit of versatility within the utilization of Rio Nicholas. Oracle Pokemon, just showing that it's timeless in the context of the black and white overused metagame. So now let's go over the sets. As I said before, I'm not going to be touching much on Life Orb Alakazam, but it is a viable option. It plays similarly to Focus Sash, but you just use 4 attacks in all likelihood. Focus Sash is fine as well. In particular, Psychic and Focus Blast are pretty much staples on it. Grass Knot is seen as a good option as it hits Tyranitar's Chople Berry set. So if you get a couple of Stealth Rock switch-ins, you could 2-kill with that without risking hitting Focus Blast. However, alternatively speaking, you can also see moves like Hidden Power Ice and Hidden Power Fire. Hidden Power Ice to ground types like Gliscor, Landorus, Garchomp, and so on and so forth, so you don't have to risk 2-killing them or 3-killing something like Specially Defensive Gliscor. And Hidden Power Fire is great for hitting things like Fire Thorn without risking Focus Blast, or making it so that you're not completely useless against Jirachi, especially offensive variant. It also can hit the rare Scizor, which is seeing a slight uptick in usage, so Choice Bands and Scizor teams cannot completely make your Alakazam useless. Beyond that, Encore is a great option, as it lets you switch in on likely Calm Minds or status moves or Stealth Rock setup, Spike setup, etc., and make those Pokemon useless. In fact, bluffing Encore was something that I did in showing Encore on a Protect and then using an attack predicting a switch was something I did in Smog Tour playoffs a couple years back, and one of my proudest moments ever. So it's really cool. And also Thunder Wave is nice, but you only really see it on teams with other Psychic types or teams that are specifically weak to Volcarona, because getting a Thunder Wave off after it breaks your Focus Sash is great if they're not Lumberry, although Lumberry is increasingly common in Volcarona, so Thunder Wave is decreasingly common on Alakazam. And last but not least, Knockoff is also a viable option. It helps you knock off things like leftovers on Skarmory, so Focus Blast can potentially do it after Stealth Rock, or knock off the Chople Berry on Tyranitar, you only have to hit 1 Focus Blast after Stealth Rocks. In addition to this, you could also knock leftovers off Jirachi, Eviolite off Chansey, leftovers off of Cresselia, or a whole assortment of other things off of Pokemon, such as leftovers off Politoed. It really just has a lot of use if you aren't using Alakazam as a breaker, but you want to be able to potentially cripple Pokemon that would be commonly countering or checking it. Admittedly, that's not kind of how Alakazam is used. It's used as a bit more of a brute force breaker. So, moreover, it's one of the least common options on it. However, it's still a viable one at that, so I felt I needed to include it. As for your Nicholas, as I mentioned before, there is some versatility among the common variants. As we see here, I listed 3 of them. The most common combinations of moves are Psyshock or Psychic plus Focus Blast and Thunder plus Hidden Power Ice. However, the combination of Focus Blast and Hidden Power Ice has been used before, as I mentioned, specifically by Io and Mortis and myself. And in addition to that, Acid Armor plus Psyshock with Rocky Helmet as the item of choice is a viable option in the current metagame. And last but not least, Life Orb Trick Room Reuniclus, also called OTR, Offensive Trick Room Reuniclus, has been used historically to a lot of success as an anti-offensive team measure. In particular, it shreds rain offense, and it does quite well against Dragmag teams in the late game once their Jirachi has been punished significantly. It does admittedly rely on the mercy of hitting Focus Blast a lot more, as it is a bit more fragile than the physically defensive Calm Mind variant, and it's also running on a limited number of turns due to Trick Room. So it's a bit riskier of a set, and in addition to this, while Recover with EV's Gladius Choice Spec Dracometer to recover that off is a viable set choice, that's now a bit less effective with Trick Gladius taking over with Sleeping Band and Sleep Talk no longer being needed. And on top of that, options such as Shadow Ball, Hidden Power Ice, and even Grass Knot are very viable in the last slot, and something that a lot of people should consider entertaining on their Life Orb Trick Room Reuniclus. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like or subscribe if you like these analytical videos, and also leave comments for other potential metagame topics you'd like me to discuss. I could discuss any NU generation from 5 and up, or any OU generation from 5 and up. I could potentially even dabble into the VOU if you guys would like. So, hey, hope you guys enjoyed this. I know a lot of people are discussing Magikarp Psychics and replacing Black White OU in recent servers that have been on Discord, so I figured I might as well make a video on the topic. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a nice night.